Your knees don't hurt because you're old. They hurt because something stopped working, and nobody told you what it was. I've spent years watching patients in their 60s and 70s accept knee pain as a permanent feature of aging, the way they accept gray hair or reading glasses. They stop hiking. They stop gardening. They grip the handrail on the stairs and tell themselves this is just what getting older feels like. I want to challenge that belief directly, because in my clinical experience, it is not aging that destroys knees. It is a specific, reversible biological failure, one that Korean researchers have spent the last 2 decades quietly studying. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what they found. The failure I'm describing has a name, but before I give it to you, I want you to picture something simple. Imagine a sponge. A thick, dense kitchen sponge sitting dry on a counter. You press it and it barely gives. It has no cushion. It cracks at the edges. Now imagine that same sponge soaked through, plump and resilient, able to absorb pressure from any direction without tearing. That is the difference between a cartilage pad that is nourished and one that is not. Cartilage, the tissue lining the ends of your bones inside every joint, has no blood supply of its own. It does not receive nutrients through vessels the way your muscles do. It feeds through a process called imbibition, which means it depends entirely on compression and release, the rhythmic squeezing of movement, to draw fluid in and push waste out. When you move, cartilage drinks. When you stop moving, it dries. And here is what most mainstream sources completely miss. The kind of movement matters enormously. Fast, high-impact movement wrings the sponge before it can absorb. Slow, deliberate, controlled movement gives the sponge time to fill. That distinction is the entire foundation of what Korean researchers discovered, and it changes everything about how you should be walking. Now, I want you to think about something you may have already tried. You started walking more, maybe 30 minutes a day. You pushed through the discomfort because every doctor, every article, every well-meaning friend told you that walking is good for your joints. And they are not wrong, but they are incomplete. Because if you are walking at a pace driven by habit, by time pressure, by the cultural impulse to get your steps in and get on with the day, you are likely compressing that cartilage sponge faster than it can rehydrate. You are doing the thing, just not the version of the thing that heals. Margaret, 71, came to me having walked faithfully for 2 years. Her knees were worse than when she started. She was devastated. What she had been doing was not wrong. It was just not calibrated. There is a meaningful difference between exercise that maintains and exercise that rebuilds. You need to know which side of that line you are on. The overlooked dimension here is pace, specifically the neuromuscular control that slow movement demands. When you walk slowly with intention, your stabilizing muscles around the knee engage differently than they do during a casual stroll. The vastus medialis, the teardrop-shaped muscle just above and inside your kneecap, activates more consistently under controlled, slow loading. That muscle is your knee's primary stabilizer. Most people over 60 have let it become nearly silent through years of sedentary habits or high-impact activity that bypasses it entirely. If you are still watching, and this is starting to resonate with your own experience, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me which knee gives you the most trouble, left, right, or both. You are not alone in this, and I read those comments. What I am about to share are 5 specific practices drawn from Korean geriatric rehabilitation research and clinical observation. Think of them not as exercises, but as a joint preservation protocol, a strategy for keeping you independent, mobile, and in control of your own daily life for the next decade. Start wherever you are. There is no prerequisite. We begin at number 5. The fear here is this. You have been told to rest it. The knee is sore, so you protect it by sitting more, walking less, loading it gently. This is intuitive. It is also the beginning of a slow decline. The cartilage that is not loaded stops drinking. Here is the first application of the slow walk protocol. Choose a stretch of flat floor, a hallway, a living room, even a kitchen. You are going to take 10 steps at roughly half your normal walking speed. Not a shuffle, not a limp. Deliberate heel-to-toe contact. Full weight transfer through each foot. You should feel your quadriceps mildly engage with each step. That engagement is the sponge being squeezed. A 2019 study out of South Korea involving over 1,600 adults over age 65 found that low-velocity intentional gait training reduced reported knee discomfort scores by 34% over 12 weeks compared to standard pace walking groups. The mistake most people make here is looking down. Keep your eyes forward, chin level. Looking down shifts your center of gravity and unloads the stabilizing muscles you are trying to recruit. 10 steps is enough to begin. Frequency beats duration. The next item protects something even more important than how far you walk. 4. Here is the vulnerability. The joint does not exist in isolation. Your knee is held in space by a web of soft tissue, and when that tissue loses its length and compliance, the joint compresses unevenly, more pressure on one side than the other, grinding rather than gliding. This is joint tracking, and it can be corrected without surgery, without medication, and without a gym membership. Sit in a sturdy chair. Place both feet flat on the floor. Slowly extend one leg until it is nearly straight, not locked, just extended. Hold for 3 seconds, focusing on the sensation of the inner thigh gently tightening. Lower slowly over 5 counts. That 5-count lowering is where the cartilage nutrition happens. A study from Seoul National University Hospital, observing 800 participants over age 60, found that slow eccentric loading, the controlled lowering phase of movement, stimulated significantly greater synovial fluid production than concentric-only exercise. Synovial fluid is the joint's internal lubricant. Without it, you have bone talking to bone. The common mistake is rushing the lowering phase. The lowering is the medicine. What comes next addresses the structure that almost nobody talks about when they talk about knee pain. 3. The quiet fear in this segment is one I hear constantly from patients. My hips are fine. My problem is my knees. And I understand why you would think that. The pain is in the knee. But your hip abductors, the muscles along the outer hip that control how your leg moves through space, determine the angle at which your knee accepts load with every single step. When those muscles weaken, the knee tilts inward under body weight. It is like a door with a bent hinge. The door is not the problem. The hinge is. Stand beside a kitchen counter or the back of a sturdy chair. Hold it lightly for balance only, not for support. Shift your weight entirely onto one leg and hold for 10 seconds. You should feel a mild burn along the outer hip on the standing leg. That burn is the hinge waking up. Research published in the Journal of Physical Therapy Science examined over 500 Korean adults in their late 60s and found that targeted hip abductor activation over 8 weeks produced measurable reductions in knee valgus angle, the inward collapse during walking. The mistake here is gripping the counter for support rather than balance. The moment you grip for support, the hip muscle disengages. You lose the signal. The next item is the one Korean rehabilitation physicians call the foundation of the entire protocol. 2. Imagine waking up and the first step out of bed is the worst moment of your day. That specific morning stiffness, the gel-like resistance before your joints warm, is your cartilage telling you it did not hydrate adequately overnight. This is where the slow walk protocol becomes most powerful and least expected. Before your feet hit the floor, while you are still lying in bed, flex and point each foot 10 times slowly. Then bring each knee toward your chest once. Hold 3 seconds. Lower slowly. This preloading sequence initiates synovial fluid circulation before axial load, before your full body weight compresses the joint is introduced. A 2021 clinical review of Korean home-based joint care programs covering over 2,000 participants found that pre-ambulation joint mobilization reduced morning pain intensity by 41% within 6 weeks. The mistake is skipping this because you feel fine that morning. Consistency is the mechanism. The joint does not care about your best days. It rebuilds on your average days. And the number one practice, the one that ties every other piece of this together, is the one most people never hear about, because it happens not in the body, but in the brain. 1. The most important revelation in this entire video is this. Slow walking works, not just because of what it does to cartilage, but because of what it does to the neuromuscular map your brain holds of your knee. After years of pain, your nervous system remaps the knee as a threat zone. It recruits surrounding muscles defensively and inefficiently. The slow walk breaks that pattern by giving the brain clear, unambiguous proprioceptive input, precise position feedback, at a pace it can actually process. Walk slowly, barefoot when safe, on a surface that provides mild texture variation. A yoga mat on a hardwood floor is ideal. 20 steps, eyes forward, full heel-to-toe transfer, absolute silence if possible. Feel every millimeter of foot contact. You are not exercising a joint. You are retraining a nervous system. This is the piece Korean geriatric physical therapists describe as the hinge of the entire method, and it is almost never mentioned in Western exercise recommendations. Here is where I want to shift the register entirely, because what we have been talking about is bigger than knee pain. Your body is not failing you. It is communicating with you with remarkable precision, telling you, through stiffness and ache, exactly where attention is needed. Decline is not a certainty written into your genetics. It is a pattern that follows from inattention, from movement that is too fast, too careless, too infrequent to feed the tissues that need feeding. 1 year from now, if you apply these 5 practices with consistency, you will likely climb stairs without negotiating with your knees. 3 years from now, you may find yourself returning to activities you quietly grieved. 5 years from now, you may be the person in your circle who is moving freely while others are not. Not because you were lucky, but because you chose to understand your body and work with it rather than around it. Every slow step you take is not just exercise. It is a choice about what the next decade looks like. Tell me in the comments, what is the one activity you miss most because of your knees? I want to know. And if this video gave you something useful, share it with someone who is quietly struggling. There is a related video waiting for you on the screen right now that goes deeper into the hip-knee connection I introduced today. That is where we go next.